going on, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Full Tilt Vegas right here on Go Live Vegas. Brett Lawson in for the great Richard De La Torre. He will be back in action in due time, but for the meantime, for this special and for our regularly scheduled show this coming Saturday, I will be right here leading the way, taking the reins, and I'm excited to do so. Hopefully a little bit smoother than the last time I did this for Richard, but I very much appreciate the opportunity, especially on a night like tonight. Here we are just over the hump day, the midweek point, where some of these betting lines for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs are really starting to take form. A lot of stabilization in the lines and a lot of two-way action, which we will get to all here on this betting preview special, as we are just a few days away from the next round of the NFL postseason. But obviously plenty to recap from just a week ago from what we saw in the wild card round, to where I was right here with Richard just last week in the midst of one of those games, the second of the game of that first day on Saturday. We were here live in the aftermath of the Cincinnati-Las Vegas affair, which Cincinnati emerged from victorious. And we were pretty much, the whole first half, I guess you could say, we were pretty much live coincidentally with that Bills-New England matchup. So obviously there was a lot to track there. We were tracking the in-game number. I had a play on New England getting the points, and I tracked each and every quarter of that as we were live here for over the course of that hour. And with each, I guess you could say, with each passing 10, 15 minutes, every interval of time that I would actually go back and check, it got worse and worse for me, all resulting in a tough loss for New England, but a incredibly huge win for Buffalo, a monumental win for the organization. Probably the biggest win that ball club has had in a long, long time. You could even say 2 decades plus. To be able to punch that team who has been absolute hell for them for such a long period of time now with the New England dynasty and Brady and Belichick, and for them to finally be able to get a significant playoff win, this is a significant win in general against New England, let alone in the playoffs, is monumental. But even more so aside from that, that's more so the icing. The cake in itself when looking at the Bills is that on paper, this is one of the 3 deadliest rosters in football, and they are starting to look like the team that we expected them to be in the initial outlook of the season. Now, again, their inability to run the ball consistently was an issue at many points throughout the regular season campaign, but we've seen Devin Singletary as of late come on strong, including just a week ago, or less than a week ago, I should say, in that Saturday night wild card contest. Again, phone lines are open as always if you want to call for this playoff special. Again, a lot to break down here with the weekend ahead. The studio line is 702-329-6947 within the states. Outside the states, 855-502-4321. Just go ahead and press 1 on either of those dials. Again, we'd love to hear from you. And again, get in those comments in the chat room on all of our visual platforms as we are live on Go Live Vegas through all social media pages. So again, we thank you for being here for this very special edition of Full Tilt Vegas. And you hear me touch up on Buffalo and New England just about a week, or just over, less than a week ago when I was last here. And that was one where I took it in the teeth in the same way Mac Jones and the New England Patriots did. Now, emerging from that game, the storyline is, can Buffalo actually make do on what they were projected to do by many and get to the AFC Championship? We now will find out with a tough road ahead going to Arrowhead, who emerged victorious last Sunday night in big fashion against Pittsburgh. So we'll get to that in a moment. The opening line at 2.5, Kansas City laying the points, a very tough game to handicap there. So that will definitely be something to follow. We'll get into these other lines as well. But I do want to do a bit of a recap from what we saw last week and just touch base. Again, phone lines are open. Call in, ask questions, fill up the chat room, and I'll get to those as well. But just looking at what we saw collectively, we saw teams make their mark. Now, again, Cincinnati and Las Vegas, that was kind of, stricken with controversy and poor officiating. But all in all, I think it's no surprise that Cincinnati emerged victorious because Cincinnati was the better team. Now the question is, will Cincinnati run into a buzzsaw against a well-rested Tennessee Titans squad, who's the #1 seed in the AFC and has that first-round bye? The Bengals are riding the momentum. The Titans are well-rested and battle-tested. That is going to be an interesting matchup. It's going to be hard to gauge what version of Tennessee we'll see because sometimes teams emerge from this bye red hot. Sometimes they emerge a little slow out of the box. A lot of that depends on coaching, and that's why a coach like Mike Vrabel is going to be very, I guess you could say, very key in this situation. These are the kind of spots he usually has his team very well prepared for. The question is, will that be the case against Joe Burrow and his arsenal, because that's the accurate word, his arsenal of weapons. So much to talk about there. But again, aside from the Bills statement against the Patriots, which was much more deeply rooted than just the 2021 campaign, but aside from that, what we saw from the former Patriot great Tom Brady and his new stomping grounds here in year 2, looking to make another go for the Super Bowl, was another statement win against a Philadelphia team that, quite frankly, was an overachiever, very much deserved to be in the playoffs, but I think was kind of hard to realistically project, given the point that this team is still a few years away. Nick Sirianni's still a few years away, despite being very impressive in year one, and Jalen Hurts is still a few years away, at least a year away, from when we'll really, I believe, to be able to accurately determine what he will bring to that ball club. But we are starting to see some positive semblances of that, especially late in the game. Philadelphia's offense finally came alive, but again, that running game was not much of a factor. It was the number one running game all year long in the National Football League, or at least down the stretch. One of the best offensive lines, but you didn't see that much against Tampa's front. Tampa's defensive line and linebackers are now starting to play and fly around the field in the same fashion we saw last year at this time when they were making that run for the Super Bowl. Vita Vea, Jason Pierre-Paul, Shaq Barrett, Devin White, Ndamukong Suh, so many of these guys in the front seven fly around, cause penetration, cause havoc in the backfield, get after the quarterback, and it makes the job for that secondary much easier. And that secondary is also a very good tackling unit and run support. So we see that Tampa Bay defense being able to pin their ears back with a lead. Philadelphia's offense was stagnant early on, and because of that, they were able to get after the quarterback consistently and kind of rattle the young dual threat there in Jalen Hurts. So obviously the jury's going to still be out on Hurts. A lot of positive signs so far from Sirianni, who a lot of people thought would be a dud in year one and was the wrong hire just under a year ago. So obviously, the main story there is Tampa now starting to look like the Tampa we saw last year, but Philadelphia on the other end is now starting to kind of assemble the pieces for what could be a team that competes regularly in the NFC East. But the NFC East is exactly where I'm going to now with the Dallas Cowboys, the NFC East champions in 2021, and a team that obviously, whenever they win or whenever they lose, is going to spark strong emotional reaction one way or the other. Well, this certainly was the case just this past Sunday afternoon with the 49ers in their 23-17 victory. Obviously, the main storyline in the initial aftermath of that game and just the ensuing aftermath, what the hell was that call on that final play on with the quarterback draw as time expired? Dak Prescott takes off, breaks free into the open field, slides with about 6 seconds left, can't get to the ball, can't set up the formation to snap the ball effectively to clock it in time, mainly because instead of handing it to the ref, he hands it to the center. And that you cannot do that because the center cannot spot the ball. The official has to first before the center puts his hand on it. Dak did not have the wherewithal to do that. But even before, it did not matter because the play call itself, even if it wasn't a call quarterback draw, whether it be Dak's decision to take off, Kellen Moore, Mike McCarthy's decision to call the play, either way, that was doomed from the start. But Dallas fans, and I get it, it's tough, it's bitter, you're going to be sour about this. It never should have come to that. The 49ers had a chance to put the foot on the throat and finish the deal right there. Now, credit for Dallas to be able to battle back into that. They deserve, I guess you could say, a moral victory type of pat on the back in that aspect. But the 49ers, given how they dominated the trenches and controlled the line of scrimmage in the first half of that game, and given what Dallas was able to do in the second half of that game, particularly the fourth quarter, the last 20, 30 minutes of on-screen action, that never should have happened. Jimmy Garoppolo making a couple of boneheaded decisions, similar to what we saw just a week ago in Week 18 against Los Angeles. The difference is in that game against the Rams, he was also stellar on a few throws. Last week, not so much, and now the main concern is he's hobbled by injury. Will he get the start? Well, as of 2 days ago, he has the green light. Yes, he will start in that matchup against Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers next week in Lambeau Field. A lot of concern there, though. Would it be the rookie Trey Lance getting the nod? That's not going to be the case. So obviously a hobbled Jimmy Garoppolo, who in the last 2 weeks has made a lot of questionable decisions, but has also made a lot of key throws. That's going to be something to monitor. Obviously, Garoppolo has a lot of moxie, a lot of game, but he has to prove that he can make those big-time throws in the key situations, because you go back to the Super Bowl a few years ago against Kansas City, a missed opportunity with a big throw. You go back, even though they've won the last 2 weeks, there's a couple of decisions there that could have been costly. However, the defensive line and the performance of Deebo Samuel for San Francisco has kind of been able to patch up those issues. Now, that's going to be the question, because against an offense like Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers, you can't afford to make those mistakes, because all credit to Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, they don't have the ability to strike and capitalize on those miscues the same way Green Bay will. So that's going to be definitely the main factor. Will Garoppolo show up and be able to make those throws? So moving on here, just a few more minutes before we head to our first break. I just want to recap up the rest of the weekend, but don't let that final QB draw be too much of an apparition. It was abysmal. It was an awful way to win the game. I enjoyed the final stretch of drama there. I almost was happy that Dallas battled back into it because it made for more compelling television, just more entertaining football. But at the same time, if you're Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, it never should have been the case. The controversial decision for Shanahan to kick that field goal instead of going for the touchdown, which would have really iced it right there and kind of taken the life out of Dallas completely, then this wouldn't have even been an issue. But it was, and yet the Niners are able to hold on to the win. And that sets us up for what we saw on Sunday night, probably the most one-sided, not even probably, I guess you could say it would be the 1 or 1A to Buffalo and New England in terms of the most one-sided matchup of this past round. Kansas City dominating Pittsburgh at Arrowhead. Close early on. Pittsburgh tried to, stay physical, stay gritty, stay in the fight, make it scrappy. But ultimately, the speed and the talent and the explosiveness of Kansas City on offense. Travis Kelce, who was exceptional, as he always has been in the playoffs, but more so this case in terms of what he's bringing to the table, threw for a touchdown. We see what this Kansas City team is when he is the primary target, and that allows Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman and Byron Pringle and some of these other weapons to flourish off of him. So if Travis Kelce is not monitored next week in Arrowhead against Buffalo, I think the result can very much be the same, and that will put a lot of pressure on Josh Allen. But more on that in a moment on the other side of the break. The main story there, ultimately, Kansas City, too much handled for Pittsburgh. Is that Ben Roethlisberger's last game in a Steeler uniform? Likely. It seems like all rumors and signs point to that being the case. Who's going to be the guy moving forward in Pittsburgh? Again, this is a team that very much overachieved. At one point in the season, a lot of people didn't think they would be here, and it really came down to that final Week 18 stretch of action, including that game of the year matchup between the Chargers and the Raiders out here in Vegas that really solidified their spot in the playoff. So Steeler fans, I don't think Steeler fans, at least the realistic ones, had too much stock in Pittsburgh making a run this time around, especially with their first contest of the playoffs taking place against a Chief team that is starting to really pick up steam and now will really get to be tested against a Buffalo team who is doing just the same next week. So before we go to break, I'll wrap things up here with the final game. I did not have a pick on this one or any type of really strong betting, I guess you could say leans or betting opinions. I did give as much analysis as I could last week of this Cardinals-Rams matchup, but since I was on the call for this with another assignment, I guess you could say, I did not in any way want to get involved in the betting ramifications. But the Rams, that line closed at 3.5, and all game long, the in-game line just kept going up and up and up because from the get-go, the Rams just continued to put it on the Cardinals. They came out, they imposed their will. They absolutely dominated the time of possession, dominated the amount of offensive plays they ran compared to what Arizona was able to run. Kyler Murray never was able to get anything going, was flustered constantly from the Rams' defensive line. Aaron Donald, Greg Gaines, Leonard Floyd, Von Miller getting after him, collapsed in the pocket, was not able to connect with his receivers deep downfield. Zach Ertz wasn't really able to do much downfield. The lack of DeAndre Hopkins hurt. Christian Kirk wasn't able to get under some of the balls that Kyler was actually able to deliver down the field and actually able to drive out of the once he was able to elude the rush out of the pocket. But for the most part, it just did not click. Meanwhile, Matthew Stafford and the Rams controlled the clock, controlled the tempo with the running game. Cam Akers, a huge factor ever since his return. Sony Michel continues to be a workhorse in between the tackles. They really have found a two-back system and a 1-2 punch that allows them to thrive, and Matt Stafford can then capitalize off of that with the play action. Cooper Kupp wasn't even that much of a factor. Arguably the best receiver in pro football this whole past year, really didn't even hear his name called that much until midway through the second quarter. This was actually, in terms of the throwing of the football, this was the Odell Beckham show. And this is one thing I want to wrap up on or touch on before we wrap up this opening segment. Odell Beckham can still play football, and I think that has been proven the past couple of weeks. We saw it against San Francisco in Week 18. We saw him look tremendous, throwing deep downfield as well. Great goal line fade with the jump ball, showing all those athletic traits he showed early on in his career before things kind of went south, whether it be this the organization in New York derailing while he was there and him never getting it going with Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. So Odell Beckham showing that he could still get it done and showing that the Rams, as well as Von Miller on the other side, those two players are starting to pick up steam and make their contributions known and seen at the right time. At the mid-season point, around the time of the trade deadline, a lot of people were concerned, would Von Miller and Odell Beckham be able to make plays like the old Von Miller and Odell Beckham were known to do? So far, that has been the case, and that's why the Rams in Tampa Bay next week is a very, very tough matchup to call and could wind up being the best game of the divisional round. So more on that in a bit. We'll go to a break here, but really quick, check out Richard's book. It's all in the book. We like to, I guess you could say, cross-promote it here on Full Tilt Vegas, because so much of what you see when Richard actually is here hosting the show, at least in the first, ever since I kind of joined the party, the first half of the show, much of his content is stripped directly from this book, because this is all from the expert himself. We actually even were talking with Aaron, our technical director, beforehand. He's very much a savant, if you will, with the numbers, with the true odds, with finding the value in numerous games, craps, poker, blackjack, roulette, all of it. He will give you the inside edge, and it's all in the book. That's why we call it that. Winning Ways, How to Beat the Casinos by Understanding Ratios and True Odds. He breaks that all down for you in these pages. It's been out for a few years now, and it's been a very, very big help for those trying to get their foot in the door in gambling. Whether you're a novice, a complete newcomer, or someone who's tried their hand in it before, this book will have a lot of tips and expert advice for you that often is not even often, pretty much always, at least whenever Richard is here, it is also kind of promoted on the airwaves as well. So you get to get the full package, tuning in a Full Tilt on a weekly basis and hearing Richard preach his stuff, and then you could get into the book as well and find it straight from the source. So again, a lot of information right here on the show, but so much of that information is rooted there in the book. And of course, for us here at Go Live Vegas, we've been making it known the past few weeks, and we will continue to plug away. We are now available on Alexa, so just go ahead as you do with Alexa for anything you're trying to access. Talk to her and she'll pull it up. The Go Live Vegas app, our full audio feed. You could also download the Go Live Vegas app, which has all of our original programming live in real time that you can listen on the audio wherever you are, as long as you have it available on your device. And in the meantime, all the rock and pop hits of the 1980s. So when people aren't talking right here on Go Live Vegas, you could jam out. So we'll take a quick break. Stay tuned. Plenty more here. It's Brett Lawson in for Richard De La Torre. It's the divisional round NFL betting preview right here on Full Tilt Vegas. We'll be back in just a second.
This is John Cena. I just wanted to send you a congratulations on your podcast. Thoughts count anywhere. Because indeed they do. Thoughts are important. I mean, what would we do without them? And how can they not count anywhere? I just wonder, is there a place that thoughts don't count? I can't think of one. Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much, congratulations, and good luck on the podcast. Thoughts count anywhere, because they do.
All right, keeping it rolling right here on the special edition of Full Tilt Vegas, right here from the Go Live Vegas studio. Brett Lawson in for Richard De La Torre, breaking down everything in the world of postseason football. And we are already underway in the teeth of the action after what was maybe, I guess you could say, an underwhelming wild card round in terms of the on the field entertainment. Most of the games were either one-sided, a couple of blowouts, a few that were entertaining down all the way to the stretch. San Francisco, Dallas being one of them. Cincinnati, Las Vegas got interesting there late. And as you hear that music, that means it's now time to look ahead, because I kind of wanted to preface everything there with that first segment where it's been a few days since Sunday. I really just wanted to touch base on everything that happened in that wild card round. And yes, like I said, it wasn't the most thrilling, it wasn't the most compelling, but it gave you a lot to finally hang your hat on in terms of how to break down these matchups this coming week. In a way, the wild card is the ultimate litmus test, because a lot of times, again, week 18, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, hard week to bet. You don't know what you're looking at. Wild card weekend, you know what you're getting, and then you're going to find out what you're looking at, and that was the case. We knew Philadelphia, after 2 weeks ago against Dallas, after resting their starters, we knew that they would be at full disposal a week later against Tampa Bay. That does not mean Philadelphia was still equipped well enough to beat Tampa Bay, and that's what we learned. Even when healthy, Philadelphia just wasn't the team Tampa Bay was, much like New England wasn't the team, despite being a division rival and a team in the regular season that gave them trouble. New England, when it all came down to it, just wasn't well equipped enough to be on par with Buffalo. So the wild card test was really a litmus test, not so much for who didn't belong, but more so for who really is in position to make a run here for the Super Bowl. And when it's all said and done, the one who raises the Lombardi Trophy usually makes a statement in this first round, and then in the divisional round when they run into that test, often in the form of those teams that are the higher seeds, the two teams that formerly got the first round bye. Now it's only one, but either way, you really get to see what these teams are made of, and now you will. For example, the first game I will dive into here, the 49ers and the Packers. 49ers getting 5.5 at Lambeau Field, the up and down 47. This is the primetime game come Saturday night on Fox. Now, obviously, plenty to gauge here. How is Green Bay going to look? They started Aaron Rodgers in Week 18 against Detroit. Resulted in a loss after pulling him early. They put in Jordan Love. They get the rest in the first round bye. All year long, it's kind of been building to the point where will the Packers be able to get back to the NFC Championship and finally get to the Super Bowl and have an opportunity to finally win it again for the first time in over 10 years. And as we got into the Thanksgiving holiday, season type part of the regular season, I guess you will, that final stretch, it became more and more apparent that Green Bay was the best team, not only in the NFC, but possibly in all of football. So obviously, San Francisco, it's going to be a tough task to get this one done. But in terms of the cover, this is interesting here. 5.5 points, conditions that actually play. I know it's cold. I know it's Lambeau Field. I know people want to hype up the frozen tundra, but the 49ers play a style of football that tends to work out well for these type of teams. We've seen teams go into Lambeau and punch the Packers in the mouth in the playoffs before, simply because they are built the right way and play the right brand of football. Deebo Samuel, Ayuk, Greg Kittle, George Kittle, all of these weapons that San Francisco has that may be a little bit different than some of the weapons that, say, a team like Green Bay or Buffalo has, but they play the Kyle Shanahan style of football. Again, the key question is in this one, as I mentioned in the last segment, will Jimmy Garoppolo will he be able to make those key throws? He made them in Week 18 against LA, which allowed them to win that game and kind of kickstart this momentum they're currently riding. Last week against Dallas, a couple of throws nearly cost them. And if it weren't for miscues on Dallas's end in the form of penalties and just questionable play calling and some of those more mental-related issues that we saw all throughout the game, even before that final stretch, then obviously it allowed the Niners to capitalize, especially with the way they imposed their will in the first half despite that late scare. So even though that was an impressive win that they deserve credit for, also makes you wonder, will they be able to escape that type of fate against a team like Green Bay, who does not allow teams who make those type of mistakes to survive? Green Bay is notorious for, especially when Aaron Rodgers is hot, they're notorious for getting a big lead early and really running away with it. You cannot play catch up with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers offense, no matter who you are, and a team like San Francisco, even with Deebo Samuel, one of the most complete weapons, if not the best utility weapon in football, and Kittle, and some of these other key weapons, Juszczyk, one of the best fullbacks in football, a great offensive line. Even so, this team is not well equipped enough, like I mentioned with New England and Philadelphia in the other respective games. This team just isn't built enough to get in a shootout with Green Bay. They're going to have to keep this close, and if they have a chance of winning it, they will have to keep this within a touchdown, and that's why that spread is so interesting. It's at 5.5. That's barely any movement at all. I'll pull up the opening line right now. I don't think it's shifted much. It has not. It opened at 5.5, and 5.5 is where it sits comfortably right now. 44% of the public bets for San Francisco. 56% of the public is betting for Green Bay. So some solid two-way action there that shows that the books really are on point with this line. And that's another point I want to mention before I segue into the next game here that we look at on Saturday. These lines are now getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Look at the projection here. I guess you could say the fluctuation here of the last 2 weeks. You look at the way the lines were in Week 18. A lot shiftier, a lot wider. They get immediately tighter next week, and now this week they are right on the money. You see hooks on these lines like a 5.5, an extra window of opportunity for Niners bettors, because this line is between these two type of teams is going to pretty much sit right here all the way up until kickoff come Saturday night. These do or die type of scenarios where you find a hook on a line or where you have to try to, really jump on a line at the right time are that much more apparent now, especially given the fact the lines aren't moving the same way they did a couple of weeks ago because of that heavy two-way action and the fact, for the most part, most of the teams you now see at this point in the playoffs are either elite teams or very legitimate teams that have a shot to compete for the title. So that's a big reason why when you gauge these lines now, it's also important to look at other windows of opportunity, other advantages you could find for profit, whether it be in the form of props, whether it be in the form of totals. And that's why it's supposed to be 8 degrees, partly cloudy with 9 miles per hour wind in Lambeau come Saturday night. And that is why one of my plays for this particular matchup, and I will reiterate these again Saturday when we go live for our normal show here on Go Live Vegas, as we will be live coinciding with that Niners Packers matchup like we were last week against Buffalo and New England. So an opportunity to kind of explain and show how that in-game line will be moving. But in terms of the line right now, I'm staying away from the 5.5. It just doesn't seem right to me. Again, San Francisco, if they punch Green Bay in the mouth up front like they did against Dallas, and if Garoppolo makes the right decisions, this could be close, but I think Green Bay is ultimately going to prevail. If I had a gun to my head, I guess you could say I'm taking money line for Green Bay in this matchup. I'm staying away from the line, but one of my first official picks here for this betting special on Full Tilt, and again, I will repeat this on Saturday, give me the under on this matchup. Again, it is at 47 right now. I like this to go south. I don't necessarily think we're going to see a true defensive game. I think we'll see some scoring, especially with these two offenses and the way they function despite being much different. But I don't think we're going to see a back-and-forth affair that pushes over that total. So give me the under of 47. No hook on it, just 47 flat. I'll take the under on that. I like Green Bay to win, but I'm staying away from the 5.5. I wanted to open with that game because that's probably the preeminent game, or the prominent game of the week, especially given the fact you have the number 1 seed against the team who just beat Dallas last week and then beat the Rams the week before. The Cinderella story, even though, I wouldn't say they're a true underdog. They had a lot of expectations to make the playoffs, but in many ways, the team that kind of caught fire at the right time and is now kind of the gritty, scrappy team that is punching a lot of people in the mouth, that team has proven to be the 49ers. So we'll see how they fare against the league's best in Aaron Rodgers. But earlier in the day with Tennessee and Cincinnati, a very tough game to gauge with a line of 3.5. This is very similar. I also like the under here, and this total is 48. You may find it 47.5 in some markets, a similar total at pretty much the exact spot on same total as the game that I just mentioned. So my two plays for Saturday are very similar. I like the under in both of these games. I like Tennessee to win this game straight up. I'm staying away from the line. I do think there is a chance with 3.5, given that hook, that Cincinnati can cover. But again, it's just a little tricky. If it was 4.5, 5.5, I'd feel a lot more comfortable. Look, this is a tough game because Cincinnati is a young team off a big win. And often in these type of spots against, a battle-tested team and a well-rested team with a coach like Mike Vrabel, a player's coach, an emotionally charged coach, a coach who really has a relationship and a rapport with the guys on his roster, these are the type of coaches that usually get their guys right for these type of spots. Sean McDermott, John Harbaugh. There are some other examples. Andy Reid. There are a few examples across the league. Sean Payton at one point when he had more competent quarterback play. It's just one of those things where certain coaches know how to tap into their talent and get them to play at a high level, especially in big spots like this. Another note, no one has been talking about Tennessee. I get it. Cincinnati's been sensational. I'm as big of a fan as Joe Burrow as anyone walking the earth right now. Trust me. Jamar Chase has been the rookie of the year. They have weapons all over. T. Higgins is becoming a great year 2 player. Uzama is a great tight end. Mixon out of the backfield is great. Boyd is a great number 3 option. The offensive line isn't even the best version of what it should be. That is going to be found in the next couple of years. So if Cincinnati were to make a run with what they have right now, we talked about underachieving in the form of, or overachieving in the form of Philadelphia. This is that times tenfold. The fact that this version of the Bengals may not even be the best version of the Bengals we see in the next few years is a huge testament to how they've been able to stack that young quarterback with elite talent around him while allowing him as an individual to also prove he may be an elite talent for years to come. It's starting to look that way. I think Joe Burrow will once again make a lot of throws. The confidence is there. The moxie is there. These are the type of games that honestly he's kind of built to play better in, if you will, just because of the type of mentality and the type of this overall style he has. He's a great quarterback. He's a mobile quarterback, but he is a gunslinger. He's a gambler. He's a risk taker, and we will see that come Saturday, I believe, against Tennessee, who can, in spurts, get after the quarterback. We've seen that defensive front be aggressive and pin their ears back. And with Tennessee, Derrick Henry now back in the mix. I don't necessarily think Henry will torch the Bengals on the ground like some may expect him to do right off the bat. It seems it's a little far-fetched. Normally, I would say it seems a little far-fetched. With a back of his caliber, maybe it happens where he immediately comes back like he was never hurt, like he never missed time. But realistically, I like to think that you should have a realistic approach to his overall production and efficiency throughout that game. However, his role, even if it just means as a decoy, him being out there is better than him not being out there. And it helps Ryan Tannehill off the play action, finding his receivers downfield. If you get A.J. Brown on the deep ball, you have a chance for him to go up on anybody. That's just the type of player he is. You have other weapons that Tannehill could find. Tannehill a little bit more limited than some of the other quarterbacks you are going to see in the playoffs. You could even make the case he's more limited than the quarterback he will be facing this week with Joe Burrow. But that being said, the team as a whole, it seems the spot, the situation, right? The circumstances surrounding this particular game just favor Tennessee to me. Cincinnati, again, I think the best is yet to come. And if they were to get to the AFC Championship in year 2 of Burrow, and after all the heat that Zach Taylor took early on in his stint, it would be hugely impressive. I just don't see that happening as of right now. So give me Tennessee, but the play is the under at 48. I think the Titans are going to come out and play. I don't think the Bengals will fold, but I think Tennessee's just going to being a little bit more long in the tooth and having a coach like Vrabel. They've been in the playoffs the past couple of years. Tannehill, Henry, these guys are seasoned, battle-tested veterans. I think Tennessee comes out, and even if Cincinnati is really tough and really just in their face all game long, or all first half long, I think Tennessee is eventually going to be able to be disciplined enough, and that experience will come into play to where Tennessee will kind of be able to solidify this one late and make a statement performance after having a week off and after having a week of everybody talking about all the other teams in the AFC. People are big on Joe Burrow in Cincinnati right now. People are big on Buffalo right now with the performances they've had. Kansas City, again, the class of the AFC the past few years now taking shape and taking on Buffalo this week. A lot of people expect the AFC champion to come out of that game, which we will get to here momentarily on the other side of our next break. But as of right now, Tennessee can answer a lot of questions moving forward and kind of re-enter the conversation of those contenders to come out of the AFC with a statement here against Cincinnati. It won't be easy. I think they get it done, though. I think this one could actually be the surprise in terms of just how often and how quick we forget about some of these teams that have been consistent throughout the regular season, but may have lost a little steam or even just lost attention because the teams like the Cincinnatis of the world and even the Chargers and the Raiders and the Steelers kind of became more relevant down the stretch and entered themselves in that conversation. Here's the thing, though. Tennessee's the number 1 seed for a reason, and you could talk all you want about Kansas City and Buffalo in that game in Arrowhead this Sunday. Tennessee's beaten both those teams, folks, and they beat them in big primetime games, and they, especially in the case of Kansas City, they whooped on them pretty good. So it's just one, and we saw a big Monday night win on a crucial stop on the goal line. Tennessee is really, really just kind of locked in for a battle. They're a team built for a fight, much like San Francisco, and that's why we saw them punch talented teams like the Rams in the regular season in the mouth. That's why this was a team that was always in the upper echelon of that, that top 10 group that you want to insert in your power rankings every year or every week, even though they may have not been the flashy, sexy kind of oohs and ahs that we see from Buffalo, that we see from Kansas City, and even Cincinnati. Watch out for Tennessee this week. We'll be back here on the other side. We're going to play this Richards commercial, or trailer, for the skateboarding ads that we normally do. So check that out. It's an interesting film that he's continuously to try to get funding for. A lot of interesting content with a unique angle. Richard has a lot of experience in the film industry, just as he does here in the gambling industry. So we're going to promote that one more time. And then on the other side, we will look ahead to Sunday's games in the divisional round. This is Full Tilt Vegas. Brett Lawson in for Richard De La Torre.
This is John Cena. I just wanted to send you a congratulations on your podcast. Thoughts count anywhere. Because indeed they do. Thoughts are important. I mean, what would we do without them? And how can they not count anywhere? Is there a place that thoughts don't count? I can't think of one. Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much, congratulations, and good luck on the podcast. Thoughts count anywhere, because they do.
There you go. Gotta love giving the plug to TCA, Aaron Phillips, Matt Mullen, the Chief, every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 Pacific time right here on Go Live Vegas. And you can find all our shows right here on any of our visual platforms and the Go Live Vegas app. And that feed that you can always find that blesses those eardrums in the Go Live Vegas app is also available now through Alexa. Go ahead and talk to her like you would in any other occurrence, and she will bring you to the promised land. You will be filled with the tones of 1980s classic rock and pop. And whenever we are live with any of our original shows right here, you will catch us in action as you do visually on any of our social media platforms. So again, thank you all for tuning in. It's a special edition of Full Tilt Vegas right here, Thursday night preview as we look ahead to the divisional round. Touched on Saturday's games just in the last segment. We'll do that again. We'll recap when we're live in a couple of days on our normally timed slot at 6 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday night right here on Go Live Vegas. We will recap what we saw in Tennessee and Cincinnati. Again, Tennessee laying 3.5 points. It's a tough line. That hook is intriguing, but I'm staying away from it. Give me the under at 48. And then we will also focus on the game live, go side by side like we did last week with New England and Buffalo. We will do that for San Francisco, going to Lambeau to take on Green Bay, which is the other game I just broke down there before we went to break. I also like the under in that contest, the same mark of 47, 47.5, 48, all in that ballpark. I like both of those games to be below the total because I think both of those games are going to be more physical rather than finesse. I think the finesse games that we could potentially see come Sunday, and that is what I'm going to dive into right right now. But before we get out of here, as we have 15 minutes before we wrap up, and I want to give you as much look ahead to Sunday as I can, I also will touch back on these games come Saturday night as we are on the eve of these games. Again, maybe going to see some line shift. Maybe something happens in the next 36 hours that will move the line or completely alter the matchup. Unlikely, but again, it's good to gauge. We will touch back on these again, but I want to jump on them now. Again, though, as I've mentioned before, you have some time, so get in on the conversation. Join in on the chat room on Facebook. Get in the comments, but also join us right here on the phones, a studio line in the U.S., 702-329-6947. Internationally, 855-502-4321. That's one more time. Internationally, catch us at 855-502-4321. In the U.S., 702-329-6947. Just press 1 to get us right here in the studio. We'd love to hear from you. So looking ahead to that Rams-Buccaneers contest, obviously, it's going to be a little tough to gauge because the Rams, we've seen the last 2 weeks in a battle against San Francisco. They come up short, but they look sharp for the most part throughout the game. We see them last week against Arizona, or just 3 days ago on that Monday night matchup that ended the round. We see them against Arizona look absolutely stellar, but given how Arizona was in a complete free fall for the final stretch of the regular season, it's hard to really put a whole lot of stock. Because we have someone joining us right now. Caller, you are on live here. Brett Lawson, Full Tilt Vegas, in for Richard De La Torre. Where are you calling from, and what do you like to talk about here?
It's Full Tilt.
There you go. It's the man himself. Richard, how's it going, buddy? Good to hear from you.
Pretty good. Doing a great job. I'm enjoying my time here with my daughter. Sorry, people, I can't be there. That's why I have Brett. He's great analyst. But my question is, because my sister called me, she's too scared to call in. What do you think the Rams winning by a touchdown or a field goal?
That's actually very interesting because that's perfect. You actually called right now, Richard, because that's exactly what I was about to dive into. So the line is the Buccaneers laying 3. If I were to be able to get that at like a hook, kind of like what you see with Cincinnati getting the 3.5, I would jump on the line. However, you look at the Rams on the money line right now. I'll pull it up. It is plus 130, so a little value, but it's actually pretty close across the board. This is a game that many of these positional units are going to be evenly matched. And like I said in the opening segment, this may be the toughest game to call of the weekend. The Rams winning by a touchdown, I'm not saying it's out of the question because, again, this offense is very, very potent. We see Odell Beckham. We see the running game starting to take shape. We see the defense and the pass rush really playing aggressive. The secondary is playing opportunistic. But Tampa Bay is built to kind of give all of those things, maybe not a hassle, but at least a very solid stalemate, much like the Rams are built to give Tampa a very tough matchup. So I think if the Rams are going to be victorious, to answer your question, Richard, I'd say more like around the line of a field goal to 4 points. I don't know if the Rams will win this one by a final of 7. I also don't think Tampa Bay necessarily will either. Tampa Bay got punched in the mouth by the Rams when they played earlier in the regular season. That was right when the Rams kind of took off early on, caught some stride, looked like the best team in the league, and then kind of came back down to earth with a couple of disappointing primetime games, one of those being against Tennessee that I just mentioned. So the Rams, all year long, it was kind of inconsistent to know what you were getting. Tampa Bay at one point was the same thing, but both teams have kind of shown the best version of themselves in recent weeks. And because of that, I think this one is a close one that the Rams actually very likely could win. Looking at the line, I would take Rams -3. I normally don't like jumping on key numbers because I could see this game ending in a 3-point differential, and that would ultimately end up in a push, which is basically in most cases you're going to get your money back. It's not a win, it's not a loss. It counts on your record, so it's not as bad as a loss. But obviously, we're looking for wins here. So if I could get a line north of 3.5, I would bet the Rams. But other than that, I'd say fire on the money line with them and just disregard the point spread because the Rams certainly can win this matchup. And going to Tampa Bay, I do not think will be that much of an issue for them. 2 warm weather teams, that's not going to be too much of a factor. The Rams, if they do the same type of things they did, run the ball, get after the quarterback, we know Brady doesn't do well under pressure, and this Tampa Bay pass rush, the best way to slow it down would be to keep it humble by running the ball. So if the Rams do what they did against Arizona, it won't be the same case because Tampa Bay is much better than Arizona, but the Rams will definitely have a shot to win this game. And as of right now, this is the one game that I'm hesitant to really go out and make a pick. But honestly, I don't go with betting narratives. I love the fact that Tampa Bay won last year. I love the fact that they brought back every starter for the first time in decades, where you had all 22 starters returning. Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. Bruce Arians is one of the best head coaches in the league. But we don't bet narratives here. We bet matchups. And it's kind of hard to stay away from the Rams right now. The Rams are built to win it all. They have one of the 3 best rosters in football. They were stacked before the trade deadline. Getting Odell Beckham and Von Miller just kind of reestablished what they were trying to do even more so. So we've seen this in 2018. They got there and they came up short with Jared Goff. They upgraded a quarterback. They surrounded him with weapons. They surrounded the defense with, or they stacked the defense with weapons. This Rams team went all in to bring home a championship. And if they want to do it, this is the opportunity to really prove that they're built to do it. Arizona this past Monday night was not, despite it being an impressive win. So I'm leaning the Rams to get the outright win. Give me the Rams on the money line plus 130. I think the total in this one at 40.5 could go over with these downfield targets. Obviously, Tampa Bay a little bit more hindered. They didn't even have Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones in the lineup last week, or Cyril Grayson. You already don't have Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is kind of the focus here along with the tight ends, but that's where Brady the tight ends is Brady's bread and butter. I could see this where Tampa Bay kind of takes a dink and dunk approach, where LA this coming Sunday really tries to thrive off the play action and pounding the football. So I'm leaning LA to get the win, and I'm also leaning the over. When I'm back here on Saturday night, I'll touch up on this again. This is a very tough one to call. So I'll take the Rams right now on the spot. Give me the Rams winning within 4 points.
Okay, so if you take the Rams on the money line, what would I do to hedge bet against it?
To hedge bet against it, honestly, the simplest way would just to be take the Tampa Bay on the money line. Because Tampa Bay, the main reason being is that Tampa Bay is laying the points. If Tampa Bay was the favorite, it could be a little bit different. Now, if you think Tampa Bay is going to win, it's a good hedging opportunity. You could pick the Rams getting 3 points. Again, 3's kind of a shitty number sometimes just because you like that hook because, Richard, you've watched football a long time. Think about how many football games, especially between 2 good teams like this, end on a 3-point deficit. That's why seeing a hook in a game with Cincinnati and Tennessee is so crucial. Or, seeing last week the hook, even though New England got steamrolled, that hook at 4.5 was so crucial because a lot of games end on 4. The key numbers are 3, 4, and 7. Anytime you can get that 0.5 hook on there, that makes it a lot easier to hedge, especially with these type of matchups. So I'd say the best hedging opportunity in this game would be taking the Rams getting the points and the Buccaneers to win. If you like the Rams to win the money line, the best way to hedge it would be, honestly, if you pick Tampa Bay to win, because Tampa Bay is very likely to win this game as well. That's reflected in the line and on the spread and on the money line. So I'd say make 2 straight up bets between Tampa Bay and LA on each prospective side. If the line was a little bit different, you could say manage it, and you could also have an opportunity for middling. Middling is obviously the easiest when the line's either a little bigger or if it has that hook on it. So that would be my recommendation, to hedge on both sides, and basically you're guaranteed to win and to lose, but that's exactly what a hedge bet is in this scenario. However, middling, as we've talked about on the show, gives you an example to win both. That's going to be very hard to do in this circumstance given the line.
Great. That's great. I'll tell my sister she's too shy to call. But yeah, you're doing a great job, Brett. Sounds good. How's our technical director?
Oh, he's outstanding. He's the man as always. He's smooth behind the boards. We have Mike on the we have Mike on the couch. We have a live audience actually for the first time ever right here on Full Tilt. So we're hot and running. We already have less than 10 minutes left in the show. It's blown by.
Good. That sounds great. Yeah, Brett's doing a great job. Also, tune in Saturday.
Yep.
He's going to give you all the picks and the recap of Saturday.
Yep, you got it. And as we,
all right, guys.
As we mentioned, we'll be there. Hey, Richard, thank you so much. We appreciate it. You take care, bud.
All right. Bye.
There you got it. And even when he's not here in the flesh, he makes his presence known. The great Richard De La Torre. Again, before we head out here, we'll actually go ahead and promote that book one more time. If our fabulous TD, the aforementioned TD, he could throw that up on the screen for those of you tuning in on Go Live Vegas. It's all in the book, Winning Ways. We talk about it, he talks about it all, and then he elaborates right here on the show. Everything you need to know. It's been out for a number of years now, and it has been a vital use of information for anyone who opens it up. A lot of that information pours out onto the set and onto the airwaves here every Saturday night when Richard is on, before I kind of have my pedestal to run my mouth about, well, all of this. So again, we've been addressing the sports betting very heavily in recent weeks, but we're still not getting away from the traditional gambling, the table games, the cards, roulette, blackjack, anything, poker, craps. He understands the value of true odds and how to get an advantage on the house, how to count cards, and so many other things that really are stigmatized in the gambling industry. And you hear it there. It's all about winning, cashing out, just like here. It's about cashing tickets in sports betting. It's about going to that cash counter with those chips in Richard's world. And this book will help you get just there. So if you want to get on the line with the last 5 minutes here before we put a bow on our Thursday, Full Tilt Thursday NFL Divisional Preview Special, jump on the line right now, 702-329-6947 within the states, outside the states, 855-502-4321. You see it on your screen there. For those watching on any of our Go Live Vegas platforms, just press 1 to get in touch with us here at the studio. And again, on the Facebook page, chat room, we like to keep it lively. Get in those comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your takes, your bets, your picks, your parlays. Who are you playing this weekend and why? What do you like? Let us know in the next 5 minutes. But as we wrap up here, again, I gave my picks there for the earlier games that we will see on Saturday. Tennessee getting 3.5 laying 3.5. Hosting Cincinnati. Don't like the line there. Give me Tennessee money line. If I had to jump on the line, I'd take San Francisco getting 5.5 against Green Bay, but instead I'm betting the under. I'm also playing the under on Cincinnati and Tennessee. So no ATS spreads on the Saturday crop. Give me the under of 48 between the Niners and the Packers at Lambeau. And then in Nashville, give me the under of 40, also 48 or 47.5, depending on where you look, between the Bengals and the Titans. I think both of those games are going to be smash mouth type of football games, very much black and blue type of affairs that will be determined in the trenches. But again, for those more finesse matchups, the matchups that could likely go over the total, that could be explosive, that could have the big plays, the highlights that, make you drop your jaw drop. I think we could see that on Sunday, given the respective quarterbacks we have. Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. You have two of the game's four best and best of the future against a quarterback who's long time been a top 10 quarterback who's trying to finally get over the hump that he was not able to in Detroit. So you have multiple top 10 guys around the league, two of them being two of the best young guns the league has seen in quite some time. And of course, that fourth quarterback being the greatest to ever play the position and who had another strong postseason performance, yet another one last week against Philadelphia. So Tampa Bay, once again, at Raymond James Stadium, hosting a much more overall formidable opponent in the Rams, who looked phenomenal against Arizona last week. You really have to wonder you really have to wonder how significant and impressive that win was, given Arizona State, given Cliff Kingsbury's team, how they completely fell back to earth. They fell through earth and created a crater. There was absolutely no positive signs of life for Kyler Murray on that squad down the stretch, and that was the case on Monday night against a Rams team that imposed their will. Can they do that against Tampa Bay? I don't think so. Tampa Bay is far too physical in the trenches, and Tampa Bay has probably the most cerebral quarterback to ever play the game, who can make use of his weapons even when he doesn't have his premier weapons like Godwin and a healthy running back core in that backfield with him. So I had mentioned it on Richard on the phone there. It was great to hear from him as he called in. That is my early play. We will address this again, though, come Saturday night with the Rams. I like the Rams to win actually outright. I think the Rams could win this game. I'm staying away from any kind of play on the line right now because I don't like where it sits. If it moves, then I'm able to jump on it and look for hedging opportunities, as Richard asked for just a moment ago on the dial. So I'm leaning the outright win for LA. Tampa Bay fell to LA in the regular season, but despite Tampa Bay catching stride as of late, and again, looking like that old Super Bowl team that we knew from a year ago, not really old, but in the NFL, a year is a long time. But it's a new year, and I think this is the Rams' year, at least, to get to the NFC Championship and try to get back to the Super Bowl and get over the hump. They equipped their roster like they did in 2018, but the key move was bringing in Stafford. That all starts this Sunday against Tampa Bay at Raymond James with the Rams getting 3 points. Again, I think that could potentially go over given the quarterbacks and the offenses in this game. But again, you also have two really good pass rushes. We'll just kind of have to see how this game goes on early. That'll kind of establish the tempo and for everything else moving on throughout the rest of its entirety. But again, we'll touch on that again come Saturday night on the show. We'll recap everything we saw in Cincinnati and Tennessee, and we'll look at the live action going on side by side as Green Bay hosts San Francisco. I'll also touch on the Bills of Kansas City one more time. That line stays solid. A lot of two-way action there. Kansas City laying 2.5. That one is one I also think the over is the way to go, at least early on. We're sitting here still a few days out. I guess things can happen, but likely everything that you could gauge in this matchup and analyze and decipher heading in, that is going to be the case in just a couple of days come Sunday night as these two teams take each other on in what is going to be a very, very, very hyped matchup given the fact it's a rematch of last year's AFC title game and the fact that Buffalo put the sauce on Kansas City earlier this year. You could make the case all around Buffalo is a better team, but again, Kansas City, a little bit easier to trust, kind of like Cincinnati and Tennessee. Cincinnati's the flashy upstart team, but Tennessee probably just a little bit easier to trust in this spot. I think that is kind of comparable to what we're seeing in this matchup, although the Bills have been, the last couple of years, playoff, I won't say perennial playoff team, but the past couple of years have been a consistent playoff team. So it's not like the Bills are strangers to this spot either, and they're certainly not strangers to playing Kansas City. The home field advantage for Arrowhead is always going to be a factor in terms of crowd noise, but in terms of conditions, it's not going to be a factor, especially with what Buffalo just had to deal with last week. If you want to talk about conditions, Buffalo's more equipped than anybody, probably outside Green Bay, in the hunt right now, so that won't be a factor. The question is, how will this defense, that pass rush, Micah Hyde, how will they hold up against Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce? We see how different this offense is when he is the focal point. And again, Kansas City, much like Buffalo, kind of inconsistent with running the football. Buffalo was able to run it last week. Can they run it again this week? Can Kansas City find a running game with Williams? That's really going to be the key factor here. In a game where you're going to see a lot of explosive plays, a lot of downfield passing, and a lot of really exceptional quarterback athleticism and overall talent, this is going to be a game where the running backs, I think, will determine it. But I'll have plenty more on that one coming up here as we touch base here again in a few days. We just wanted to do a full hour look ahead as we did here tonight. I thought it was very effective. Gave us an opportunity to look ahead of those Saturday games because we won't see you in between now and then. Those games will be wrapped up, at least the first one, and next time we see you, that second one of that day will be going on. So I thought this was very productive. It was a great idea for Richard to plan this. I thank him for letting me fill in. He will not be back this Saturday, but he will be back a week from then to get back in the flow of action as we return to our standard, him doing the first half, me doing the second half, and we bring the worlds of sports betting and casino-based betting and gambling all together. But again, we'll be back here. I'll be back in this seat come Saturday for Richard right here on Full Tilt Vegas. We'll recap the Saturday matchups. We'll look ahead to Sunday, and I will also touch on, for the first time, we're going to preview the fight game. I'm going to talk how to bet the Octagon as we look ahead to Francis Ngannou versus Cyril Gane with the UFC Heavyweight Championship on the line. That's all coming up this Saturday, a big sports weekend. Get in on the betting action now, whether it be at the counter or the mobile apps. You want to get those tickets in now, and we'll be able to talk about it in just a few days. So again, join us in the chat room when that time comes. Join us on the phones. We'll promote it on all our social media platforms because we want you to tune in. But until then, this has been Full Tilt Vegas. Brett Lawson in for Richard De La Torre. That is a wrap here on our Thursday NFL Divisional Round Special. If you like any of those Saturday games, good luck, and we'll be back here in a few days to preview the rest of the crop. Have a good one, everybody, and enjoy the action.